my name is Isabel, and I am a senior about to graduate, majoring in psychology with a specialization in health and development, and I am autistic. My freshman year, I was in Cedro, so it was Wilbur dining. We just had a table, like a long table that we sat at for meals. I mean, it wasn't compulsory, but the RAs, I don't know, I think that was their way of like community building. Like, we're going to sit at this table. It just means that there's a lot of people close to you because there's not a whole lot of space, and everyone's talking across, and there's just a lot of things that I would only go to like my dining hall because I didn't want to like even just like a new layout. Like, I would just kind of wander around and like be really overwhelmed. So I like do the same thing every day, like have my routine. But I felt like, okay, I guess I should be social and talk to people maybe, even though I didn't like it. Pretty quickly I realized I was just going to sit in the corner by myself and eat my food and get out of there. Because of like sensory things, I can kind of get pushed into like a meltdown because I can't like escape the bad sensory input. I had a really bad interaction my freshman year during NSO with RAs who decided things were a crisis and everyone got less and less and less information, and then they couldn't make decisions, and so then no one listened to me, and I was like, this is ridiculous. You can't make decisions or listen to me. The biggest thing is the lack of information. Once you tell the people, this is what is likely to happen, this is what I need in those instances, here's how you can help me, here's what you do not do, everyone's been super on board with it, my RFs, everyone. But without that information, they're going to assume whatever they've been given in training. And so if they haven't been trained in anything related to neurodiversity, if someone's crying and biting their hands and is not responding to you verbally, that looks really scary, understandably. But I haven't had experience where I've like explained this to an RA and then had them not respond positively. Taking away some of the like imposition on the neurodiverse person to have that conversation, like it wasn't a comfortable experience for me. Like, I was probably pretty like anxious, like sitting through this meeting knowing like, okay, I'm gonna go talk to my RF, like I had emailed him before and asked to like set up a meeting. But if there's like more awareness about that, or even like RA is just saying like creating an environment, it's like, hey, if you have things you want to tell us, or fill out this form, and that can be a way to facilitate those conversations, especially if you don't realize that that might be a good thing to do ahead of time.
I was wondering if there were any like structured dorm activities that were helpful.
I pick and choose. Like, if there is an activity that is not necessarily just social based, like there are other humans around, but trivia, you're just asking me a question and I'm like writing my own answers down. I don't really, there's not a whole lot of crosstalk happening, but you still get that like social interaction and like laughing about things that you're end up like you accidentally have a conversation rather than the point being a conversation. And so there are things that RAs are already doing, but I think like being really intentional about that is like a good thing to keep in mind.
My name is Anna Krakowski. I'm a senior majoring in English. I'm from New York. Yeah, and I suppose I have chronic pain, and I have depression with psychotic symptoms. Also anxiety nonspecific and or PTSD.
I did at one point tell my RA, like at least one of my RAs, a lot of the things I was going through, and she tried to be helpful with like, she's like, I'm really sorry you're going through like physical and mental health challenges. I don't know entirely what the best protocol is for learning how to approach someone with trauma, because trauma can be so different for each person. But I think one thing that I did learn that I thought was useful that I learned in a class that I took was compassionate humility, where you're willing to put yourself out there and try and say something and ask questions and try and provide support in whatever way you think is right, but you're always willing to admit that you might be wrong about what's right at that moment. And it focuses a lot on being bolder and being willing to offer support, even if you realize it's the wrong way that you offered support in the first place. Just, it's good to offer that support. I do wish there had been more conversation about mental health in general around orientation, or just openly in the dorm, poor information about how to access mental health, programming around mental health, things like that.
You just heard from neurodivergent Stanford students with different experiences in the dorm and different perspectives on how the dorms could have created spaces where they could better thrive. The term neurodiversity basically means that individuals with differences in brain functions are thought of as part of normal human variation. I hope that you appreciate the differences in these perspectives, but also take away some key commonalities. First, the typical dorm community can be really isolating for people who identify as neurodivergent or neurodiverse. Some common challenges of neurodiverse conditions include social anxiety and social unawareness, sensory sensitivities, and tics and repetitive behaviors. These social, sensory, and behavioral challenges can make crowds, loud noises, and implicit judgment by others difficult. Unfortunately, these barriers often exist at common dorm activities and in dining hall interactions, limiting residents' engagement in the community. Second, there are specific ways you can help. One of them is providing alternative modes of communication that lessen the social and sensory barriers. For residents who struggle with in-person dialogue, putting information in emails and group chats can help them stay connected. Another way to help is to explicitly normalize and welcome residents coming forward with any challenges they have. For example, for residents with ADHD, that could include maintaining the attention necessary to complete assignments, or struggling to navigate handling the new responsibilities that come along with college. Speaking more broadly now, designing social events with neurodivergent residents in mind can be an amazing way to expand and enrich the dorm community. When you think about neurodiversity, I encourage you to frame it in terms of strengths, not deficits. People have many types of intelligence. And for some neurodiverse people, even though they're not adept in some areas of intelligence, they really excel in others. That same concept of having areas where you're more skilled and more challenged is true for every person. So when you talk to your residents and help them through challenges, make sure you focus on the areas of strength and how they can leverage them. You might be curious, how do you know if a neurodivergent student is in your dorm so that you know what to look out for and to accommodate them? This is tricky. First, because you shouldn't pressure anyone to disclose their conditions. And secondly, because a lot of neurodivergent students don't have a formal diagnosis. But if you take concepts of inclusivity to heart, it shouldn't actually matter if you know whether someone in your dorm is neurodivergent or not. You should design activities and communities that will allow everyone to participate and play off their strengths. New residents coming to campus will have to deal with signing up for classes, finding clubs to get involved with in an overwhelming activities fair, and navigating new social relationships with strangers. All of this can be very challenging, not just for people with neurodiverse conditions. For you to universally design a welcoming dorm experience, we encourage you to have the following practices right from the beginning of the year. Try not to put the burden on the neurodivergent or neurodiverse student to come forward to you. Make it clear that you're open to talking about any types of challenges, in whatever mode of communication they're most comfortable with. Some in-person meetings may seem required to you for building community. Ask yourself if they are as universally accessible as possible. Consider that some people are more comfortable with texting and written communication. Can you provide that as an alternative to having to be there in person or having to share something verbally in front of everyone? Think about establishing dorm norms so that it's not just you and dorm staff who are being accessible. Can it be a priority for the whole dorm to be universally inclusive, minimizing barriers of social interaction and sensory or physical challenges? With those practices in mind, we've provided several handouts for you to get more in-depth resources that will be useful when you're thinking about neurodiversity. Mental health is really important to consider in the neurodivergent population. Since social inclusivity is key to mental health, the dorm community can make a big impact in this area. We've also given you a handout on universal design, which goes more in depth with some of the inclusivity practices we talked about. This handout provides a checklist to help you design your events and communities in an inclusive way. Finally, please discuss and reflect on these questions with the rest of your staff. First, how will you incorporate neurodiversity in the design of your dorm events? And secondly, how can the changes you make also improve the experiences of neurotypical residents? Thank you for your time and attention, and for your interest in learning more about neurodiversity.